Well, welcome today to Prophetic Perspectives, where we look at current events through the lens of the prophetic. And I'm joined today by my good friend and our Vice President of Spiritual Services, Tom Hardiman. Thank you for joining me today.
It's great to be here with you, Chris.
I love it when you co-host with us here. You know, in light of things that are happening right now, what we're seeing take place in the earth, in Ukraine and Russia, right now. I was kind of praying this morning and asking the Lord for some verses to kind of just give me maybe a context in the Word of God where we see, you know, what's happening and what's going on. And we talk about what we're seeing on TV, the violence, the terrible, evil aggression to innocent people, women and children, war crimes being committed by the Russian army, and just corruption. Psalms 55, verse 9 through 15. Now listen to this. If this is not for this time, in the midst of this Russian aggression against Ukraine, Psalm 55, verse 9 through 15. Lord, confuse the wicked. Boy. Confound their words. For I see violence and strife in the city. Day and night they prowl about on its walls. Malice and abuse are within it. Destructive forces are at work in the city. Threats and lies never leave its streets. If an enemy were insulting me, I could endure it. If a foe were rising against me, I could hide. But it is you, a man like myself, my companion, my close friend, with whom I once enjoyed sweet fellowship at the house of God as we walked about among the worshipers. Let death take my enemies by surprise. Let them go down alive to the realm of the dead, for evil finds lodging among them.
Wow.
I mean, if this does not describe in part at least what's happening in Russia and Ukraine. You know, Russia came out of Ukraine, and a lot of both sides have their opinion on, this same event, but you can read these words from Psalm 55 and think, wow, the death, the violence, the evil is lodging itself in men. But then the thing that really stood out to me the most was he was saying that the real struggle was the fact that it was people that he loved or valued, that now they're fighting. There's evil. Many of these Ukrainians and Russians are related.
Oh, my.
You literally have family fighting against family, depending on which side of the war they're on. And they don't want this. There's good Russian people. There's good Ukrainian people. There's Christians in Russia. There's Christians in the Ukraine, and we're praying the peace of the Lord in turbulent times for them. But Tom, something really stood out to me. Recently we saw where President Biden finally stopped importing oil from Russia. But this is the thing, and talking about the American response to the terrible thing that's going on over there. What can America do? What can we as a nation do to help this, since it seems at least up till this point we're not getting involved militarily?
It does seem like God's humbling our nation.
Yeah.
There's a measured judgment that I do believe we see unfolding that, of course, is concerning. But when we're under judgment like this, we do have courses of action that we can take. And God, I do believe, would like our nation and our national leaders to humble themselves.
Yeah.
And while it will be a far cry and a real leap of faith for some of that to happen, I do believe that in the activity that God is unfolding on the earth, he is, in a sense, giving our leadership of this nation an opportunity to take a different course of action.
Yeah.
What I find really fascinating is that even in the midst of all of what is going on, God does have an answer to this.
Yeah.
He has a way to dissipate to reduce or to even eliminate future judgments if we will respond properly.
Yeah.
And so while I have to resist the frustration that I feel, I do feel like part of my response, my appropriate response, is God open the eyes of the leaders of our nation and the nations of the earth. I mean, God could intervene. And while it may seem not plausible right now, God could intervene. He could talk. He could send an angel to talk to Putin, or he could walk the halls of Congress. So there are answers. And while it appears like all of this is really going down a very regrettable road, I do believe that God would have us as believers stand in the gap and make up a hedge so that the calamities that potentially are there could either be reduced or eliminated.
Wow, that's good. I like something that you said there. It really resonated and stood out to me, talking about how that our nation is under a measure of judgment right now, but there are avenues of alternate routes we can take.
Yeah.
There is a way of making things right. 1 Corinthians 10:13 says, "No temptation has overtaken you that is not common to man. God is faithful. He will not let you be tempted beyond your ability. But with the temptation, He will also provide the way of escape that you may be able to endure it." Wow. There is still opportunity for America to do the right thing in these times. And you and I as individuals, no matter where we find ourselves right now, there is a way of escape.
We were in a prophetic roundtable a week or so ago with a number of Rick's friends and prophetic individuals that he asked to come here.
Yeah.
And while we're talking about all of this that was unfolding, Bobby Conner had a really concise prophetic word that I felt was an answer to some of the dilemmas that we're facing. And he referenced the time where I forget who it was, but it's Jonathan and his armor bearer.
Yeah.
And while they're trying to survey what's going on, they have a really unique solution to a very complex situation, and it was a simple solution. And what Bobby was saying was, there are perhaps very simple solutions that are unorthodox that can provide solutions to very complex problems. And it's not the typical solution that you might consider. And so while all of this can be quite perplexing, a prophetic person and people that we operate around may indeed have an answer to all of this. And so while there seems a small glimmering hope in all of this, I feel like we as believers need to pursue God for answers. And if God will give us an answer, perhaps He'll open a door for the right person or the person of influence to hear what we're saying. But I've heard you say this before, Chris, and I really get encouraged by this, is that God is going to put us before people at certain periods of time so that some of the things that He wants communicated to them, He's going to give us answers to, and we'll be able to be the messengers with those answers. I mean, it's not infrequent in the Bible where people are confronted with very complex situations where God has a very simple but unorthodox solution to a big problem.
That is so good and so true. And that very statement, God providing prophetic solutions, simple solutions to complex problems. That's a good setup for our next segment. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back in just a minute.
Hello, I'm Rick Joyner. I wrote 4 books last year, but these are, I believe, some of the most important I've written in a long, long time, maybe even ever. This one is called The Second American Revolution / Civil War. It came from a dream I had in 2018, a very graphic dream, when the Lord started showing me things that you can see even from the time I had that dream in 2018. This is already unfolding. And anyway, this is about that, and I throw in a lot of the other information and knowledge of what's going on so that we can discern the times and know what to do in them. Now, this is another book I wrote last year, The Awakening. It's about my personal sojourn. I wrote this one of the most important I think I've written in a very long time, on Marxism and its strategy for destroying America, how it has almost already finished the job. It's infiltrated our schools, the media, entertainment, virtually across America. And they formulated a 45-point plan in the 1930s for taking over America, the Marxists. And they have just about finished the job. They have very systematically and very patiently gone after every one of these, and I lay out all 45 points, how they have been working those points, and how many have been accomplished, how they did it, and where we are now, and what we need to do to reverse this. It is not too late, but if we don't act soon, we're going to lose our democratic republic to this ultimate evil and this ultimate enemy of liberty and freedom. We have to understand this basic military principle. You cannot defeat an enemy you do not see. And to see means to understand it, to be able to perceive it as it's working against you. And I believe when you read this book, you're going to see all of the places that it is now manifesting itself and seeking to take over our country. Lieutenant General Jerry Boyk and myself wrote this book together on the principles of war, taken from Clausewitz's 12 Principles of War. You know, Jerry and I used to teach this. He would teach each principle, lay out the military application, and then I would take each principle and lay out how you could apply the same principle in business and schools and missions and virtually any endeavor. And it helps to plan strategically, have clear objectives. And there's a saying, those who do not know the principles of war are going to be used and will serve those who do. Well, these are simple, easy to understand. Jerry had 36 years in military, one of our greatest military warriors in our generation. And I've been studying military history and history in general since I was 15 years old, studied Marxism since I was 19 years old. But we combined and condensed that knowledge into something you can read in just a few hours. It's powerful, it's written to the point, succinctly. We try not to waste any words, but you can get it and start applying these. And I believe to the degree that you apply them, you are going to be successful. We're going to let you have all of these together, and we're going to pay the shipping. You're not going to pay anything but $49 for all 4 of these books together. And I believe you're going to be so glad you got these and have read them, because every one of them is relevant to our times today.
Well, welcome back to Prophetic Perspectives. And right before the break, Tom, you really set us up great for this next segment. You were talking about a prophetic word that was given recently at a prophetic roundtable that you and I both attended. And the prophetic word was that God can provide very simple solutions for complex problems.
Yeah.
Let me give you an example about how right now in America, the response that we're seeing from the Biden administration and from the leaders of our United States government, how that if they could hear that prophetic word,
Yeah.
how that they could turn things around. I mean, they are making so many bad decisions right now and responding to Russia's aggression, when it's really very simple if they would just stop being so stubborn to adopt a policy that maybe a former administration tried that worked, but they cannot. They're too scared of their left-wing radical base to make and provide simple solutions for the high gas prices, for instance. It is a complex problem, but there are simple solutions.
There are simple solutions to this. Isn't that, I mean, right before us, we have solutions to the issues, and yet there's such entrenched ideology on the part of the people that are in control right now that they will not permit themselves to embrace a simple answer or a simple solution to the problems. And so while I do feel like God is humbling our leadership in this nation and displaying it before different parts of the world, there still is moments where, wouldn't it be something if we watched the administration get up tomorrow morning and say, we're going to permit the drilling of oil on some of our public properties or public. Wouldn't that be amazing to see that kind of reversal? And yet, I'm not confident that that's going to happen at all. But let's not make the circumstances more complex than what they are, because God will give solutions. And I think in the future, some of the circumstances could get so extreme that we may watch some of our leaders really humble themselves. Wouldn't that be a reversal?
Yes, it would. So to dig down further into what you just said, the current president of the United States is right now doing the opposite of that prophetic word. He's trying to strike new oil deals with other despot dictators of other corrupt nations such as Venezuela and Iran, literally sending ambassadors to the Venezuelan government. We don't even officially recognize Nicolas Maduro as the leader of Venezuela. A lot of people don't even know that. We no longer, after that debacle in 2019, how in the world do you try to strike a new deal to drill more oil and import it to the United States with a government you don't even officially recognize, but you're willing to pay them for services? Now, get this. He is, just because he does not want to cave in and he wants to appease the radical far left environmentalist fringe of his party. Now, of course, we're all for making responsible, wise choices and protecting God's creation, of course. But here's the thing. He would rather make new oil deals with Venezuela and Iran than he would to rescind the Keystone Pipeline ban and allow clean drilling on our public lands. Or how about this? How about open up ANWR in Alaska? I mean, simple solutions for complex problems. A lot of people don't understand, but friends, what I'm just describing right now is political insanity. Okay? So look at this. The United States, as I said, does not even officially recognize Maduro as a legitimate president of Venezuela. But yet they're trying to officially strike an oil deal to bring down oil prices. I'm sure you are feeling those high oil prices right now, which are at a record high. They have not been above $4 a gallon as a national average in the United States since the housing crisis in 2008. Now, Biden won't, as of today, he stopped buying oil from Russia. Or just recently, I should say, he did. And he continues to pay U.S. money, into these other nations. I wish somebody could give this simple solution to this complex problem to President Biden and simply say, stop catering to AOC +3. Stop catering to these radical environmentalist crowd and tell them to sit down long enough and shut up long enough to actually understand that America can drill oil in a cleaner way than
Yeah.
any other nation can on the entire face of the earth. Now, while you're explaining that to them, you could say, listen, we're a nation, we're looking towards the future of becoming more and more clean energy. But here's the thing. Just 14 months ago, Tom, the United States was energy independent. 14 months ago. Now, you cannot have a society, modern society, without energy. And the fact of the matter is, we literally see the Biden administration trying to appease the environmentalists to say, well, we don't want to start drilling more. They're giving these lame excuses. Well, there's so many approved permits already, for private drilling and all of this. But the fact is they are avoiding the solution. In this time of mass confusion, they are avoiding the fact that while we work towards someday having clean energy, they do not want to provide the necessary immediate solution which could bring down gas prices. And here's the interesting thing. If you only took the time, friends, if you only took the time to figure out who these clean, green energy producers, okay? If you figured out whose pockets they were in Washington, you would understand the reason why, okay? They're pushing so much for a future solution when we need a current one.
Yeah.
If you understood, for years we've heard the left say, well, the oil executives are in the pockets of conservatives. Well, the green energy industries are in the pockets of the far left liberal politicians in D.C. Somebody needs to point out, if you want to work towards a solution, how about natural gas, which has very little emission for energy? Or how about this? Nuclear energy, it has zero emissions. So if you could literally right now use, gas, and you could use nuclear energy with little to no emissions, wouldn't that just be a common sense approach, an easy solution for a radical problem? But the reason why they can't explore nuclear and gas as a new form or more used form of energy is because the green energy industry is in the pockets of liberals. Now, another thing I want to point out. Anybody remember what gas prices were before Trump left office?
Under $2 a gallon, wasn't it?
Yeah, $2 or maybe
75.
Something like that. It's almost double or more than double that now. And I think it's also important to remember that while the administration would rather blame the Russia invading Ukraine as a reason or as a legitimate reason for why gas prices have went up so high for you and for me, we need to remember something important. Don't be fooled, friends. We need to remember gas prices were approaching record high before Russia invaded Ukraine. And so I bet you right now there are a lot of Americans regretting their 2020 presidential vote. And I bet you that there are many people right now who are missing the days of mean tweets.
Yeah.
and wish they would have voted different.
The Sunday after Biden was inaugurated, I spoke here at MorningStar, and I felt like the Lord gave me a phrase: not all my cards are on the table. And I felt that there was more things that God was going to expose that would persuade the American people, up front and personal, that the direction that the administration, the Democrats and the far left media and left-leaning politicians, he was going to persuade the public by putting before them the exact ramifications of their decisions, and that That would be a card that he would play to convince America that the direction that we were on and the direction we were going was not the right direction. And here we have it unfolding right now. I think God's playing one of his cards.
I agree. And, I think this serves well today since we're talking about simple solutions for complex problems. And we just gave a few. We just gave a few of the simple solutions. But sometimes politicians like to overcomplicate things, which is why we as believers must keep our faith in God and hold on to our Judeo-Christian value system so we don't fall to the deception of the hour. Thank you so much for joining us today for Prophetic Perspectives. We hope you'll share these broadcasts with your friends and family. And until next time, I'm Chris Reed. This is Tom Hardiman. We say, God bless you.
God has his people who know what spiritual warfare is, and sometimes I'm so glad to say he uses little women.
There's an impartation of character, of wisdom, and authority that is going to come through the mothers. The blessing of the mothers, the teaching of the mothers, spiritual mothers who are imparting, reproducing the purpose of God.
Is there going to be an Enoch generation, a church that wakes up and says, oh my God, I got it wrong. I've been trying to please people. I've got to find out what God wants me to do.
She weaved her sick soul through that crowd and touched him in a way that pulled out of him something he had no intent at that point on giving.
And a voice came booming out of heaven. This is my beloved son. How can you ladies be a son of the kingdom? Because it has nothing to do with gender. It has to do with the word of God becoming flesh.